Diplomatic Officer Vexia Talaran smoothed the iridescent fabric of her formal attire as she surveyed the gleaming docking bay. In a few moments, she would become the first Solarian to officially greet a human ambassador. Her silver-blue skin shimmered under the station lights as she adjusted her ceremonial collar, the mark of her prestigious position within the Solarian Stellar Authority. "Nervous, Officer Talaran?" asked Commander Elixis, her superior's voice tinged with amusement. "Hardly," Vexia replied, her large opalescent eyes narrowing slightly. "I'm simply curious to observe this species firsthand. The educational modules hardly painted an impressive picture." In truth, Vexia had volunteered for this assignment partly out of ambition and partly from a desire to confirm what every Solarian already knew about humans, that they were an unremarkable species from a resource-poor planet, awkward in both appearance and manner. Their recent faster-than-light breakthrough had forced the Solarian Empire to acknowledge their existence, but most considered it a tedious diplomatic formality. "Remember," Commander Elixis cautioned, "despite their limitations, we need this alliance. Their solar system contains elements our refineries require." Vexia nodded, her crest of delicate, translucent appendages rippling with the movement. "I'll ensure the human feels welcomed, Commander, though I can't imagine this Ambassador Mercer will be particularly memorable." The station's announcement system chimed. "Human vessel approaching docking sequence. Stand by." Through the massive observation window, Vexia watched the sleek diplomatic shuttle maneuver into position. It was unexpectedly elegant for human engineering. Perhaps they had progressed further than their intelligence reports suggested. The airlock cycled, emitting the soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Vexia straightened her posture to her full height of 7 feet, preparing her diplomatic smile, a gesture she had studied meticulously from human cultural files. The inner door slid open. Vexia's carefully rehearsed greeting died on her lips. Ambassador Kai Mercer stepped into the docking bay with a fluid confidence that immediately commanded attention. He stood tall, taller than most humans according to their files, with broad shoulders and a physical presence that somehow managed to be both powerful and graceful. His skin was a rich, warm brown, his closely cropped hair dark with hints of silver at the temples. But it was his eyes that truly caught her off guard, a deep, intense green that seemed to take in everything at once, including her. When those eyes met hers, Vexia felt an unexpected flutter in her secondary cardiovascular system. "Officer Talaran," he said, his voice a resonant baritone as he executed a flawless Solarian greeting gesture. "On behalf of Earth and humanity, I'm honored to meet you. Thank you for welcoming me to Celestial Station Eridani." Vexia blinked twice, her nictitating membranes betraying her surprise. He'd pronounced her name perfectly, a feat few non-Solarians could manage with their limited vocal ranges. "Ambassador Mercer," she finally managed, recovering her composure. "The Solarian Stellar Authority welcomes you. Your journey was comfortable, I trust?" He smiled, an expression of surprising warmth that transformed his already striking features. "Perfectly suitable, though I admit I'm still adjusting to extended space travel. Earth has only been sending people beyond our solar system for a decade." His honesty was disarming. Most diplomats would never admit to any form of weakness or inexperience. As she led him from the docking bay toward the diplomatic quarters, Vexia found herself unusually aware of his presence beside her. The standard briefing materials hadn't prepared her for a human who moved with such easy grace, who spoke with thoughtful intelligence, whose smile seemed genuinely warm rather than performatively diplomatic. "Your station is breathtaking," Kai commented, looking up at the soaring crystalline architecture. "The way you've integrated organic forms with functional spaces, there's nothing like this in human design." His genuine appreciation caught her off guard. "You have an eye for Solarian aesthetics, Ambassador." "Kai, please," he said, that smile appearing again. And I've always believed you can learn the most about a civilization through its architecture and art. What people create reveals who they truly are. Vexia nodded, surprised by the insight. An unusually perceptive observation. As they reached the diplomatic quarters, Vexia found herself reluctant to end their interaction. This human was nothing like the crude, simplistic species described in her briefings. Ambassador Kai Mercer was sophisticated, observant, and, she had to admit, physically striking in ways she hadn't anticipated finding any non-Solarian. "Rest well, Ambassador," she said formally. "Tomorrow's schedule begins with preliminary Treya."
The provisioning requirements seem excessive, Kai noted, his finger sliding along the glowing text of the treaty draft. Earth cannot supply this quantity of rare earth minerals within the proposed timeframe. 3 days into negotiations, Vexia found herself increasingly distracted by Ambassador Mercer's presence. He had proven himself not just physically appealing but intellectually formidable. Where she had expected to easily outmaneuver a primitive diplomat, she instead found herself engaged in a genuine diplomatic chess match. "Perhaps," Vexia replied, keenly aware of his proximity across the crystalline table. The Solarian Authority could adjust the timeline if compensatory measures were included. The negotiation chamber's ambient lighting caught the sharp angles of his jawline as he considered her proposal. His eyes, those disarmingly green eyes, narrowed thoughtfully. What sort of compensatory measures? Vexia's crest fluttered slightly, an involuntary response she hoped he wouldn't recognize as a sign of her flustered state. Advanced propulsion schematics. Nothing classified, of course, but improvements to your current systems. Kai smiled, that radiant expression that seemed to transform the air between them. "That's quite generous, Officer Claren. I'll need to consult with Earth Central, but it sounds promising." "Excellent," she said, perhaps too quickly. "And please, when we're working directly. Vexia is acceptable." His smile deepened, creating small lines at the corners of his eyes that she found inexplicably fascinating. "Vexia, then." When the day's negotiations concluded, Vexia made an impulsive decision. "Ambassador Mercer, Kai, would you care to see more of Celestial Station Eridani? Our scheduled tour isn't until next week, but I could show you some of our cultural highlights personally." "I'd be honored," he replied with genuine enthusiasm. The upper promenade of the station was one of Vexia's favorite places, a sprawling garden space where exotic flora from across Solarian territories created a living tapestry of color and scent. Walking beside Kai, she felt an unusual self-consciousness, hyper-aware of how different they must appear to other Solarians. Her willowy blue form and crystalline crest beside his solid, warm-hued human presence. "These blossoms," Kai said, stopping to admire a cluster of luminescent flowers, "they remind me of bioluminescent sea creatures from Earth's oceans." "Abyssal lotus," Vexia explained, impressed by his comparison. "They evolved in the methane seas of Sealer's third moon." "The similarity to your Earth species is fascinating convergent evolution across galaxies. The universe finding similar solutions to different problems," Kai mused. "Perhaps our species aren't as different as we might think." His words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond mere evolutionary biology. As they continued their tour, Vexia pointed out architectural features, explained cultural symbols, and shared historical anecdotes. Kai listened with genuine interest, asking insightful questions that revealed a keen mind and surprising sensitivity to cultural nuances. Our diplomatic archives suggested humans lacked appreciation for abstract concepts, Vexia admitted as they paused before a swirling holographic art installation. "But you seem to grasp our philosophical traditions quite readily." Kai laughed softly. "Your archives might need updating. Humans have spent millennia contemplating our place in the universe. We just lacked the technology to explore it properly until recently." Their wanderings took them to a viewing platform overlooking the vast stellar nursery that gave Eridani Station its spectacular backdrop. Cosmic dust and newborn stars painted the darkness with swirls of blue, purple, and incandescent gold. "Beautiful," Kai whispered, his face illuminated by the distant starlight. Vexia found herself studying his profile rather than the cosmic display. "Yes," she agreed softly, not entirely referring to the stellar view. Their moment of quiet appreciation was interrupted by a sharp voice. "Officer Claren." Vexia turned to find Science Director Nerix approaching, his crest rigidly formal. "Director," she acknowledged. "I wasn't aware the human ambassador was scheduled for a station tour today," Narek said, his large eyes briefly scanning Kai with poorly disguised disdain. "An impromptu cultural exchange," Vexia explained smoothly. "Ambassador Mercer has shown remarkable interest in Solarian arts and architecture." Narek's gaze shifted between them, clearly noting their informal proximity. "How accommodating of you," he said coolly. "The High Council would appreciate your report on today's negotiations by evening cycle." After Narek's departed, Kai raised an eyebrow. "I seem to have created some diplomatic tension for you." Director Narek's represents a more traditional faction, Vexia explained. "Some Solarians believe our society should remain culturally isolated despite our technological expansion." "And you?" Kai asked, his voice soft but direct. Vexia met his gaze. "I believe understanding different perspectives strengthens rather than weakens us. It's why I requested this assignment. Not to confirm humans are the primitive species your educational module suggested?" he asked with a hint of teasing. He rushed to Vexia's face, turning her skin a deeper blue. "You overheard that. My shuttle's communication systems activated earlier than expected," he admitted with a small smile. "Though I must say, your reaction when I stepped through that airlock was quite gratifying." Vexia's embarrassment deepened. "Ambassador Mercer." "Kai," he corrected gently. "Kai," she conceded. "I apologize for any preconceptions. They were clearly mistaken." His hand moved slightly, almost as if he might reach for hers, before returning to his side. "No apology needed. First impressions are seldom accurate across species. I had my own misconceptions about Solarians." "Oh." Vexia raised an eyebrow ridge. "And what were those?" "That you would be coldly logical, emotionally detached," he said thoughtfully. "But I found you to be passionate about your work, your culture, and remarkably expressive, despite your diplomatic training." Something in his tone made Vexia's dual hearts beat faster. The way he looked at her, as if truly seeing her, not just as a Solarian diplomat but as an individual, stirred feelings she had never anticipated. "We should return," she said finally, her voice slightly unsteady. "You have communications to send to Earth Central, and I apparently have a report to prepare." As they walked back toward the diplomatic quarters, their hands occasionally brushed, a seemingly accidental touch that sent ripples of sensation through Vexia's nervous system. Each time, she found herself wondering if humans experienced the same intensity of awareness from such simple contact. And each time, she found herself hoping they did. The Solarian diplomatic gala transformed the grand hall of Eridani Station into a sparkling wonderland. Crystalline sculptures cast prismatic light across the gathered dignitaries, while ambient music, created by the gentle vibration of resonant minerals, filled the air with haunting melodies. Vexia stood with a group of Solarian officials, half listening to their conversation while her eyes repeatedly drifted toward the entrance. The peace treaty was progressing well after 2 weeks of negotiations, and tonight's celebration was meant to showcase Solarian cultural achievements to their new human ally. To Kai. She caught herself. "Ambassador Mercer," she corrected mentally. This growing fixation was unprofessional and potentially disruptive to her career. Yet she couldn't deny the anticipation that fluttered through her system at the thought of seeing him in a less formal setting. "He's late," Science Director Nerix observed, following her gaze. "Perhaps humans lack our appreciation for punctuality." Before Vexia could respond, the entrance portal illuminated and Ambassador Kai Mercer stepped into the hall. He wore formal attire that blended Earth diplomatic styling with subtle nods to Solarian aesthetics, a deep blue jacket with silver geometric accents that complemented rather than mimicked Solarian formal wear. The room's subtle lighting caught the planes of his face, the breadth of his shoulders, the confident grace of his movements. Vexia wasn't the only Solarian whose crest fluttered in response. "Ambassador Mercer cleans up well for a human," remarked diplomatic attaché Mira, her tone suggesting more than professional approval. No wonder Earth Central selected him for this mission. Vexia felt an unexpected surge of something like possessiveness. "His credentials are impressive beyond his appearance," she said coolly. "Crisis negotiation experience, multiple advanced degrees, fluency in 7 Earth languages." Mira shot her a knowing look. "You've studied his file thoroughly." Before Vexia could formulate a suitably detached response, Kai approached their group. He executed a perfect formal Solarian greeting, the complicated gesture flowing naturally from his human hands. Officer Claren, he said, his eyes meeting hers with warmth that seemed reserved just for her. Director Nerix, Attaché Mira. The Grand Hall is spectacular tonight. Ambassador, Vexia acknowledged, fighting to keep her voice even. We're pleased you could join us. I wouldn't miss it, he replied. Though I apologize for my tardiness. I was finalizing communication with Earth Central regarding our propulsion technology exchange. Director Nerix's crest stiffened with interest. And they've approved the exchange, Kai confirmed. With some adjustments to the timeline that I believe will satisfy both parties. Vexia felt a surge of professional satisfaction mingled with personal delight. Their collaborative approach was yielding results. As the evening progressed, Vexia found herself repeatedly in Kai's orbit. They circulated separately among the gathered dignitaries, but like binary stars, they inevitably drew back together. Each time they reconnected, their conversations grew more personal, more revealing. Before diplomacy, I led crisis response teams, Kai explained as they paused before a towering ice sculpture. Natural disasters, refugee coordination, territorial disputes. I've seen humanity at its worst and its best. That explains your unshakable calm during negotiations, Vexia observed. I've tried to rattle you several times without success. His eyes crinkled with amusement. You've noticed I occasionally let you in minor points to secure major ones. And you've noticed I sometimes feign indecision to gauge your priorities, she countered, surprised by their mutual candor. We make good adversaries, he said softly. And better allies, she added, her voice equally low. A subtle shift in the ambient lighting indicated the Gala's transition to its next phase. Anti-gravity platforms descended from the ceiling, carrying Solarian musicians with instruments incomprehensible to human eyes. The harmonic convergence, Vexia explained. A traditional performance that hasn't been shared with non-Solarians in centuries. As the haunting music began, Kai leaned slightly closer. Would you show me the viewing terrace? I've heard the music resonates differently there due to the station's crystalline structure. Her rational mind knew this was a transparent excuse for privacy, yet she found herself leading him through a side passage to the small observation deck that extended from the grand hall. The transparent dome offered a breathtaking view of the stellar nursery, while the music from within created ethereal reverberations through the crystal floor beneath their feet. They stood side by side, alone for the first time since their tour of the station. You've been avoiding me since that day, Kai said quietly, his eyes on the cosmos beyond the dome. Vexia considered denial, then opted for truth. It seemed prudent. Because of what others might think, or because of what you might feel. The directness of his question, so typically human, caught her off guard. In Solarian society, such emotions would be approached obliquely, through layers of cultural metaphor and ritualized conversation. Both, she admitted, her voice barely audible over the resonating music. This alliance is too important to complicate with personal factors. Kai turned to face her fully, his expression serious. In my experience, the best diplomatic relationships are built on genuine connection, not just protocol. Connection is one thing, Vexia said, her secondary heart racing. But this is attraction, he finished simply. Across species, cultures, worlds. Unexpected but undeniable. The word hung between them, finally acknowledged. Vexia felt simultaneously relieved and terrified. Is it even possible? She whispered. Physically, culturally. We're from different worlds. Kai's hand moved slowly, deliberately, until his fingers brushed against hers, a touch that sent electrical sensations up her arm. We're different, he agreed. But differences can be explored, understood, appreciated. The music from the grand hall reached a crescendo that seemed to vibrate through Vexia's very being. Or perhaps that vibration came from within her, from the proximity of this human who defied every expectation. There would be consequences, she warned, even as her fingers curled subtly against his. My position, your mission. I've never let fear of consequences prevent me from following the right path, Kai said softly. Have you? His face was close now, his eyes reflecting the starlight that streamed through the dome. Vexia found herself studying the unfamiliar contours of his features, the straight line of his nose, the curve of his lips, the subtle texture of his skin so different from her own. No, she whispered. But I've never faced a dilemma quite like this one. Her crest rippled with emotion she couldn't suppress, the translucent appendages glowing softly with bioluminescence, an involuntary response that would telegraph her feelings to any Solarian observer. Kai noticed the glow and smiled. Beautiful, he murmured. His hand moved slowly to her face, hovering just shy of contact. "May I?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that she felt as much as heard. Vexia nodded, barely breathing as his fingertips brushed the curve of her cheek. The warmth of his skin against hers was electric, alien, intoxicating. The music reached its final, resonant note as they stood suspended in that moment of first intimate contact, a human and a Solarian on the edge of uncharted territory, with the birthplace of stars as their witness. The warning klaxon shattered the peaceful hum of Eridani Station's diplomatic sector. Red emergency lighting bathed the corridor as Vexia rushed toward the central command hub, her heart's pounding with the station's elevated alert status. 3 standard weeks had passed since the Gala, 3 weeks of increasingly successful negotiations punctuated by stolen moments with Kai. Private conversations in the botanical gardens. Fingers brushing during document exchanges. One breathtaking evening when he had shown her Earth constellations on the observatory's holographic display, standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Each encounter deepened her fascination with this human who combined strength with gentleness, confidence with curiosity. But they had been careful, professional and public, aware of the scrutiny their unusual friendship already attracted. Now, as emergency protocols engaged across the station, Vexia's first thought was for Kai's safety. She activated her wrist communicator. "Ambassador Mercer, what is your location?" Static answered her. Communications were down. The command hub doors slid open to reveal chaos. Solarian officers moved with urgent purpose between monitoring stations as Commander Elixis barked orders. "Officer Tlaren." Elixis acknowledged her arrival. "We have a serious situation. The station's gravitational stabilizers are failing sequentially. Engineering reports evidence of sabotage." "Sabotage?" Vexia's crest flattened in alarm. "By whom?" "Unknown," Elixis replied grimly. "But the pattern suggests someone with knowledge of our systems who opposes the human alliance." Cold dread settled in Vexia's stomach. The isolationist faction within Solarian society had been vocal in their disapproval of the treaty negotiations, but she never imagined they would resort to endangering the station. "The human delegation?" she asked, striving to keep her voice neutral despite her personal concern. "Unaccounted for," Elixis said. "Communication systems are compromised in the diplomatic sector. We've dispatched security, but..." The station lurched violently, throwing several officers to the floor. Warning displays flashed across monitoring screens. "Primary stabilizer has failed," reported a technical officer. "Secondary systems engaged but showing signs of cascade failure. Estimated time to complete gravitational collapse, 42 minutes. Commander Elixis's expression was grim. "Begin evacuation procedures. Priority personnel to emergency vessels." "Sir," Vexia interjected, "I should locate the Earth delegation. Their loss would be a diplomatic catastrophe." Elixis hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Go, but report in regularly. If you're not at evacuation point Theta, 9 in 30 minutes, we cannot wait." Vexia rushed from the command hub, her slender form moving with purpose through corridors now filling with anxious Solarians heading toward evacuation points. The diplomatic sector was 5 levels down, currently inaccessible by lifts due to power rerouting. She reached the emergency access tube and began her descent, the climbing rungs cool beneath her hands. The diplomatic sector was eerily quiet when she emerged, the normal ambient lighting replaced by pulsing red emergency indicators. "Ambassador Mercer," she called, moving swiftly toward his assigned quarters. "Kai." A crash from the conference room drew her attention. She changed direction, palming the manual door release when the automatic sensors failed to respond. The sight that greeted her stopped her cold. Kai stood atop the conference table, his formal attire discarded for a fitted undersuit that revealed the muscular physique usually concealed by Earth diplomatic garb. He had removed the ceiling panel and was deep in the internal workings of the station's infrastructure, his hands moving with surprising expertise among crystalline power conduits and neural interface nodes. "Kai," she gasped. He glanced down, relief washing over his features. "Vexia, thank the stars. I was trying to reach command." "What are you doing?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "Trying to bypass the sabotaged systems," he explained, returning to his work. "There's a pattern to the failures. If I can isolate the compromised nodes from the central network." Vexia stared in confusion. "How do you even understand our technology? These are proprietary Solarian systems." Kai's hands never stopped moving as he answered. Crisis response training includes engineering adaptability. I've been studying your infrastructure schematics since I arrived, standard protocol for any diplomatic mission to understand emergency systems. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Gravity fluctuated momentarily, causing loose objects to float before crashing back down. We need to evacuate, Vexia insisted. Commander Alexis has ordered. If we evacuate now, the station will be lost, Kai interrupted, intensity in his voice. This isn't just about property damage, Vexia. A gravitational collapse in this location will create a cascading tear in space-time that could threaten the entire sector. She moved closer, watching his hands work with practiced precision despite his unfamiliarity with Solarian technology. How do you know this? Because whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, he replied grimly. This isn't random sabotage, it's calculated destruction. The stabilizer failures are synchronized with the stellar nursery's radiation pulses. When the next major pulse hits, understanding dawned. It would amplify the collapse exponentially. Exactly. Kai connected two crystalline nodes that glowed brightly at his touch. I need your help. Your cellular structure can interface directly with these neural conduits, right? Vexia nodded, already moving to join him atop the table. Yes, but it's dangerous to attempt without proper equipment. More dangerous than a sector-wide spatial rupture, he countered with a grim smile. She couldn't argue with that logic. What do you need me to do? Create a bypass between these primary conduits while I reroute power from the auxiliary systems, he explained. We need to establish manual control over the remaining stabilizers and synchronize them to counteract the next radiation pulse. Working together, they fell into a rhythm of coordinated effort. Vexia extended filaments from her fingertips into the neural interface, a painful process without preparation, while Kai reconfigured power distribution with improvised tools. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness as the station continued to shudder around them. Sweat beaded on Kai's forehead, his face set in intense concentration. Vexia's arms trembled with the strain of maintaining the neural connection. Almost there, Kai murmured. One more reroute and The station lurched violently, throwing him off balance. Vexia reached out instinctively, catching him before he could fall from the table, but the sudden movement tore her neural filaments free, sending searing pain through her nervous system. She cried out, collapsing against him. Vexia. Alarm filled his voice as he supported her weight. Are you hurt? Neural shock, she managed through gritted teeth. Temporary. I think. Kai's arms tightened around her as another tremor shook the room. We're out of time. The radiation pulse is imminent. Through pain-blurred vision, Vexia saw what he meant. The nearest viewport showed the stellar nursery flaring with gathering energy. Get to the evacuation point, Kai said urgently, helping her to her feet. I can finish this. You don't have Solarian neural capacity, she protested weakly. You can't. I'll find another way, he insisted, already turning back to the exposed system. The determination in his eyes told her arguing was pointless. This human, this remarkable being she had expected to find primitive and unremarkable, was willing to sacrifice himself to save a station full of aliens who had mostly regarded his species with condescension. No, she said firmly, straightening despite the lingering pain. We do this together. Something flashed in Kai's eyes, respect, admiration, and something deeper that made her dual hearts skip in perfect synchronization. Together, he agreed softly. They returned to their desperate work as the minutes counted down, the station's tremors increasing in frequency and intensity. When the final connection needed to be made, requiring both Solarian neural interface and human physical strength to hold the unstable components, they found themselves pressed together, her hands guiding his body supporting hers. Now, Kai called as the viewport blazed with the incoming radiation pulse. Vexia sent the neural command through their joined hands, feeling the strange heat of his human skin against her own as the system engaged. For one terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then the station's trembling subsided as the stabilizers synchronized against the radiation wave. The crisis point passed. They remained frozen together, Vexia's neural filaments still connected through Kai's steady hands, both scarcely daring to breathe. Around them, emergency lighting dimmed as regular systems began to restore. We did it, Kai whispered, his face inches from hers. In that moment of shared triumph and lingering danger, with adrenaline still coursing through her system, Vexia acted on impulse. She closed the small distance between them and pressed her lips to his, an intimate human gesture she had researched but never experienced. The sensation was extraordinary, alien, yet somehow perfect. His lips were warmer than hers, softer than she had imagined, and when his arms encircled her fully, drawing her closer against the solid warmth of his chest, she understood why humans valued this form of connection so highly. When they finally separated, both breathing heavily, Kai looked at her with wonder. "I've been wanting to do that since the moment I stepped off the shuttle," he admitted. Vexia's crest glowed with unrestrained emotion, illuminating his face with soft blue light. "I believe," she said softly, "that my diplomatic assessment of humans requires significant revision." His answering laugh was interrupted by the conference room door sliding open to reveal Commander Alexis and a security team, their expressions moving rapidly from emergency readiness to stunned surprise at the scene before them. The High Council chamber of Eridani Station hummed with subdued conversation as dignitaries assembled for the treaty signing ceremony. 5 days had passed since the sabotage attempt, 5 days of investigation, repairs, and diplomatic intensity. Vexia stood at attention beside the Solarian delegation, her formal attire pristine, her posture perfect. Only the subtle, occasional glow of her crest betrayed her inner turmoil. She hadn't spoken privately with Kai since that moment in the conference room when Commander Alexis had discovered them. The subsequent security protocols, emergency meetings, and diplomatic formalities had kept them professionally connected but personally distant. Their conversations had been limited to official matters, always surrounded by others. The saboteurs had been identified, a small faction of isolationist extremists who opposed any alliance with lesser species. Their plan had been more dangerous than even they realized. According to the scientific assessment that confirmed Kai's analysis, a gravitational collapse would indeed have created a spatial tear with catastrophic consequences. Now, as the ceremony preparations concluded, Vexia found her gaze drawn inevitably to the human delegation. Kai stood tall in formal Earth diplomatic attire, his bearing confident yet somehow distant. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, and the intensity of his gaze sent a familiar ripple of sensation through her system. Commander Alexis stepped to the central podium. Distinguished representatives of the Solarian Stellar Authority and Earth's United Planetary Alliance, we gather to formalize the first diplomatic treaty between our civilizations. The ceremony proceeded with the precise formality typical of Solarian diplomatic tradition. Speeches were made, documents displayed on crystalline screens, ceremonial gestures exchanged. Through it all, Vexia performed her role flawlessly while her thoughts remained fixed on the human ambassador and the uncertain future that awaited after today's ceremony. When Kai stepped forward to deliver Earth's formal address, his resonant voice filled the chamber. 5 weeks ago, I arrived on this station expecting to negotiate a straightforward resource exchange. What I discovered instead was the possibility of something far more valuable, a true alliance between our worlds based on mutual respect and understanding. His eyes found hers momentarily before continuing. Recent events have demonstrated that we are stronger together than apart. When faced with crisis, our different perspectives and abilities combine to prevent disaster. This is the promise of true cooperation, not just the exchange of resources, but the sharing of knowledge, culture, and perspective. The speech concluded to appreciative murmurs from both delegations. The treaty was displayed for final review, a document that Vexia and Kai had crafted together through countless hours of negotiation, compromise, and collaboration. As the formal signing commenced, Vexia's diplomatic training allowed her to maintain perfect composure despite the emotional turmoil beneath. One by one, representatives approached the document, adding their biometric signatures to the historic agreement. When it was her turn, she stepped forward, aware of Kai watching from the Earth delegation's position. Her finger touched the crystalline surface, leaving her distinctive blue imprint beside the growing collection of signatures. And then it was done. The treaty was signed, the alliance formalized. The gathering transitioned to a celebratory reception, with dignitaries mingling more freely as servers circulated with refreshments. Vexia found herself surrounded by Solarian officials offering congratulations on the successful negotiation. She accepted their praise with appropriate modesty while scanning the room for Kai. Eventually, she spotted him engaged in conversation with Science Director Nerix, an unexpected pairing given the director's previous disdain. As she approached, she caught fragments of their discussion. Remarkable intuitive grasp of our technology. Nerix was saying, his tone notably more respectful than in previous encounters. Without your intervention, the damage would have been catastrophic. I had excellent help, Kai replied, his eyes finding Vexia as she joined them. Officer Clarin's neural interface capabilities were essential to our success. Director Nerix's crest rippled in what might have been embarrassment. Yes, well, it seems I may have underestimated human adaptability, and perhaps the value of cross-species cooperation. With a formal nod to them both, Nerix moved away, leaving Vexia and Kai in a moment of relative privacy amid the crowded reception. Ambassador, she greeted formally, aware of watching eyes. Officer Clarin, he responded with equal formality, though his eyes conveyed much more. The treaty exceeded initial expectations. Your negotiation skills are exceptional. As are yours, she replied. Earth has sent a worthy representative. A server approached with beverages. As they each accepted a crystal flute of luminescent Solarian nectar, their fingers brushed briefly, a contact that sent familiar electricity through Vexia's nervous system. I've been reassigned, Kai said quietly after the server departed. The words hit Vexia with unexpected force. So soon. Earth Central believes the success of this mission warrants expansion, he explained. I'm to establish a permanent diplomatic office on Sealer Prime, with a full staff and cultural exchange program. Relief washed through her. That's excellent news for the Alliance. And perhaps for us. The question in his eyes was clear. Before she could respond, Commander Alexis approached. Officer Clarin, a moment of your time. With an apologetic glance at Kai, she followed her superior to a quieter corner of the reception hall. Your performance during these negotiations has been exemplary, Alexis began. Particularly your handling of the crisis situation. The High Council is impressed. Thank you, Commander, Vexia replied, wondering where this was leading. They've authorized a new position, diplomatic liaison to Earth. You will be stationed at their new embassy on Sealer Prime, facilitating cultural and political exchange. Alexis paused, studying her reaction. Given your obvious rapport with humans, you seem ideally suited. Vexia fought to maintain her composed expression. The position sounds challenging but rewarding. Indeed. Alexis's crest rippled with subtle meaning. Though I should note that Solarian diplomatic protocols regarding personal entanglements with foreign representatives are ambiguous. The traditional prohibition applies specifically to active negotiations. Once treaties are established, he left the implication hanging delicately in the air between them. I see, Vexia said carefully. The choice is yours, Alexis concluded. The High Council requires your decision by tomorrow's cycle. As the commander departed, Vexia remained momentarily frozen, processing the unexpected opportunity before her. When she finally turned back toward the reception, she found Kai waiting nearby, his expression questioning. Without explanation, she gestured toward one of the small balconies that lined the reception hall. He followed her outside, where the spectacular view of the stellar nursery provided both privacy and breathtaking beauty. For a moment, they stood in silence, side by side as they had so many times during their negotiations. I've been offered a position, Vexia finally said. Diplomatic liaison to Earth's new embassy on Sealer Prime. The smile that spread across Kai's face was radiant. That would make us colleagues rather than negotiating counterparts. Yes, she agreed, meeting his gaze directly. And apparently Solarian diplomatic protocols regarding personal relationships are quite different once treaties are established. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Is that so? It seems our timing was merely premature, not inappropriate, she explained, feeling a flutter of nervousness she hadn't experienced since her first diplomatic assignment. Kai moved closer, his warmth radiating in the cool air of the balcony. And have you decided whether to accept the position? I'm considering all relevant factors, she replied, a hint of teasing in her tone as she deliberately used diplomatic language. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a gesture that bridged their physical differences. Perhaps I could present additional arguments in favor of acceptance? Vexia's free hand rose to touch his face, tracing the now familiar contours that had once seemed so alien. I believe I would be receptive to such persuasion. As the stellar nursery cast its ethereal light across them, Kai leaned forward slowly, giving Vexia time to withdraw if she wished. Instead, she moved to meet him, their lips connecting in a kiss that felt both familiar and thrillingly new. His arms encircled her slender form, drawing her closer as her crest illuminated with intense emotion, bathing them both in soft blue radiance. When they finally parted, Kai's eyes reflected the starlight and the glow of her bioluminescence. I've been thinking about that since our moment in the conference room, he admitted, his voice low and intimate. As have I, Vexia confessed, her fingers tracing the contours of his face with newfound freedom. Though I suspect we caused quite a scandal among the security team. Kai laughed softly. Worth it, he murmured, his thumb gently stroking the delicate skin at her wrist where her pulse beat rapidly. This won't be simple, Vexia said, pragmatism asserting itself even as she savored his touch. Interspecies relationships are rare even among closely related civilizations. Between a human and a Solarian. Unprecedented, Kai finished for her. But then, so is this alliance. Perhaps we're simply at the forefront of a new era of understanding. The diplomatic optimism that had initially drawn her to him now made her smile. Always the ambassador. Speaking of which, he said, his expression growing more serious, there's something else Earth Central included in my new assignment brief. Something I've been authorized to share only after the treaty signing. Vexia's professional instincts sharpened. Oh. Earth scientists have been developing medical technologies for interspecies biological compatibility, Kai explained. Originally intended for xenotransplantation and emergency care scenarios for diplomatic personnel, but the applications are broader. Understanding dawned. You mean? Intimate physiological compatibility, he confirmed, a hint of color rising in his cheeks. The research is preliminary but promising. Temporary cellular adaptation through programmable nanomediators. Vexia felt heat spread across her skin, deepening her natural blue coloration. That's remarkably forward-thinking of Earth Central. We've learned that diplomatic relationships often extend beyond formal negotiations, Kai said with a small smile, and that all forms of connection strengthen alliances. The possibilities implicit in his words sent a cascade of sensations through Vexia's nervous system. She had researched human intimacy out of curiosity, cultural understanding, she had told herself, but never imagined it could be more than academic knowledge. And would you be interested in such scientific exploration? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kai's fingers intertwined with hers more firmly. I've been fascinated by Solarian biology since I first saw you, he admitted. Your bioluminescence, the neural capacities your species possesses. Everything about you is extraordinary. His free hand moved to her crest, hovering just above the delicate, translucent appendages that now pulsed with intensifying blue light. May I? He asked, echoing his question from their first intimate moment on the observation deck. Vexia nodded, her breath catching as his fingers gently made contact with her crest, an intensely sensitive area rarely touched by anyone outside family or bonded partners. The sensation was electric, sending cascades of pleasure through her neural network. Her reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Her crest illuminated brilliantly, and she gasped, steadying herself against his solid frame. Too much? Kai asked immediately, concern replacing desire in his expression. No, she managed, her voice unsteady. Just intense. Our crests are highly sensitive to touch. Understanding dawned in his eyes. I should have realized. I'm sorry if Vexia silenced him with another kiss, this one more confident than before. Don't apologize for discovery, she murmured against his lips. That's what exploration is about. Around them, the sounds of the reception continued, a distant reminder of their public roles and responsibilities. But in this moment, sheltered on the private balcony with the cosmos as their witness, they were simply two beings discovering each other across the boundaries of species and culture. I should return before my absence is noted, Vexia said reluctantly, though she made no move to disentangle herself from his embrace. We have time, Kai assured her, his fingers tracing a gentle pattern along her arm. All the time we need to learn each other properly. The promise in his words warmed her. Then I accept the liaison position, she decided. For the benefit of Solarian-human relations, of course. Of course, he agreed with a smile that suggested far more than diplomatic motivations. Though I must warn you, humans can be extraordinarily difficult to understand. As can Solarians, she countered, allowing her fingers to explore the fascinating texture of his hair. But I've always enjoyed a challenge. The stellar nursery beyond the viewport flared with sudden brilliance as a new star ignited, bathing them in golden light that seemed to bless their newfound connection. Neither could miss the symbolism, a new beginning, bright with possibility, born from the fusion of different elements. New horizons, Kai whispered, his gaze moving from the celestial display back to Vexia's face. For us, she agreed, her crest glowing with unmistakable joy. And for our worlds. As they reluctantly parted to return to the reception, to their public roles and responsibilities, they both understood that something profound had shifted. What had begun as diplomatic curiosity and unexpected attraction had transformed into something with the potential to bridge worlds. Vexia Tlarin, who had volunteered for this assignment expecting to confirm her species' superiority, now found herself humbled by the depth of connection possible across the vastness of difference. And Kai Mercer, sent to secure Earth's interests among the stars, had discovered that the greatest diplomatic achievement might be not what was written in treaties, but what was shared between hearts. They re-entered the reception separately but caught each other's eyes across the crowded chamber, a private acknowledgement of what had passed between them and the promise of what was yet to come. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, explanations to superiors, arrangements for relocation, inevitable cultural misunderstandings, and the whispers of those who would disapprove. But tonight, as stars were born in the cosmic nursery beyond Eridani Station's crystalline walls, something equally miraculous had begun within, a love that defied expectation and transcended worlds. And neither of them would ever see the stars quite the same way again. The end.